everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that'll have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. Love the ads here. Winnie Columbia 10-speed Formula IO racer details inside. So, Uncanny X-Men 151 from 1981. So we are doing all this in reading order. So we have covered everything. I have a playlist. I started with Giant Size X-Men number 1, which I covered as Classic X-Men number 1. I use Classic X-Men because of all the exposition, so feel free to check that out. Once Classic X-Men stopped with the exposition and the backup stories, I just reverted to X-Men. Now, how I got introduced to all of these stories was through Classic X-Men. And here we have this cover with Kitty Pryde. I've gone out and bought most of the issues now as an adult. However, I don't have this one, so this one's still on my list to eventually buy this. I do have it in the Classic X-Men though. And it says here, the day Kitty Pryde leaves the X-Men is the day the X-Men fall. This cover is by Dave Cockrum with Joseph Rubinstein. And again, we use some screen tones here. I'm a huge fan of old-time ink thick brushes. So, and you can see that here. Although I'm not a huge Cockrum fan, I do love the art when inkers really get to put that brush in and sling it away. So, all right, this is the cover to the Classic X-Men. So, Beware the Sentinels kind of gives a little bit more of the story. This cover is by Andy Kubert, who was the artist in the X-Men during this time. The Classic X-Men was released after the Jim Lee had left to go join Image Comics. So, here we have our credits. Even though Cockrum is the regular pencil, and he'll remain the regular pencil for a few more issues, he is taking an issue off. So, he might be taking 2 issues off. We'll see here. Chris Claremont writes, these 3 guys will all do the art. So Rubinstein will ink. I think these 2, this Jim Sherman, who I have no idea who he is, does like half, and Bob McLeod does the other half. Bob McLeod will be the initial artist or penciler in New Mutants. So Orzechowski is the longtime letterer. And so X-Men -1. And so we start out here with Professor Xavier having received a letter, and then all these little dots here are all done with oh my gosh, screen tones here. And he says, I'm afraid I have some bad news. Kitty's parents have decided to withdraw her from the school. They realize that Kitty likes it here, that she's doing well academically, but they believe it will be more advantageous for her to attend a school whose pupils were more her own age. She's to leave us within the week. And by the way, she's hanging around in her bathing suit. That's just... And Cyclops says, just like that, Professor, out of the blue with no warning whatsoever. And Nightcrawler is, can they do such a thing? And so they're all in the pool, and I love this part here. So apparently they're all in the pool except Cyclops. But here's Wolverine, who has his costume on, but he does have a towel. And then Nightcrawler apparently is always wearing his costume. So, and Professor Xavier says they are her parents, and you can see Kitty here like, oh, I love borderless panels. Their actions are perfectly within their rights. I think they are making a mistake, but if their minds are made up, there's nothing we can do to prevent it. And so Kitty runs off and she goes, "You could at least try." So she phases through everybody to get out. Um, and Professor Xavier says, "Let her go, Storm. You too, Colossus. For the moment, I believe Kitty would rather be left alone." And Wolverine says, "A simple solution, Charlie. Why not use your telepathic powers to make the kid folk change their minds?" And he says, "I may have indulged in such tactics in the past, Wolverine, but no more. To deliberately manipulate a sentient mind would make me no better than the villains we oppose." Now, I want to make a quick sidebar because in Secret Wars, which I am covering, he does that exact same thing to Spider-Man. So, and he didn't even hesitate. So, apparently the Professor Xavier will change his mind about that. So Wolverine continues here. "So you're going to let the kid go?" And he says, "Wolverine, we have no choice." And so Kitty's going upstairs into her room. And you can see here she's in bed, just poor thing, all depressed here. And so here comes Storm. Says, Kitty, are you all right? You didn't come down for supper?" She says, "I'm not hungry. Would you like to talk?" And Kitty's like, "No." And Storm says, "It isn't like you to sulk." And she says, "I'm not sulking. I just want to be left alone." And she says, "I understand, kitten." "Well, I don't," she says, and she phases out. Um, and Storm says, or thinks, "Goddess above, her phasing can be as disconcerting as Nightcrawler's ability to teleport." And so Kitty's gonna explain to Storm here. And Kitty says, "I'm happy with the X-Men, happier than I've ever was back home in Deerfield. I didn't think that was possible. Why do my folks want to screw that up? And do you have any idea where they're sending me?" "To the Massachusetts Academy, Ororo, whose headmistress is Emma Frost, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club." Of course, you can see Storm looking like, "Oh shit," because of course she remembers from the Dark Phoenix saga. And she's like, Kitty goes, "You remember her, don't you?" And Ororo is like, "I remember." So we're going to kind of skip this. I have this all covered. This was all covered in the Dark Phoenix saga. As I mentioned, I have a playlist with all of this stuff. So we'll continue down here. "We assumed the White Queen had been slain during her psionic duel with the Phoenix, but if she somehow survived," Storm now continues here, "my hands trembling after all this time. Merely thinking of what happened terrifies me. I felt so vulnerable in the White Queen's hands for the first time since childhood, completely helpless. The professor will have to telepathically examine Kitty's parents to ensure they aren't acting under the Queen's influence. Kitty, hard as it was to accept your parents are only doing what is they think is best for you." And Kitty kind of snaps here. "That's a crock, Ororo. They're splitting up and they want me out of the way while they do it. Why do you think they sent me here in the first place? If they really cared, I'd be home with them and we'd be a real family again." So, and Storm just kind of grabs her here and says, "Now who's being selfish? Kid, things change. People change. What is real one day is not always real the next." And she's like, "They're my folks, Ororo. If they didn't love each other, why'd they get married? Why'd they have me? If I can't depend on reality, what can I depend on?" And so we're going to get more exposition to Storm's sort of origin. I've covered it all. And we're going to go back here. And Storm says, "I wish I knew, kitten. I'm frightened, Ororo. Will you ever stop loving me?" And she's like, "Oh, my darling, perhaps when I die. Life is very lonely, Kitty. To live it well, you must be strong enough to trust, to risk, to forgive. Your parents do love you. I suppose I heard, Ororo." And Storm just says, "You're growing up, kid." Well, she didn't add the kid, but you know, this part here is how other just want to kind of go back here. This is how kids would react. So I think this is good writing, and she looks more like a kid here than ever before. So, good job here. So it's now the morning after. Wolverine's still wearing Wolverine clothes, and so is Nightcrawler. Everybody else has changed. They're packing. They packed her stuff, loading it into the Rolls Royce, and Xavier says, "We can send your furniture after you or home to Deerfield." And she says, "No, keep it here. I intend to visit you guys every chance I get." Like it or not, Professor, I'm an X-Men. You won't be rid of me so easily. And gives him a kiss. It says, "Farewell, child. As an X-Men sprite, you're one of the best." I hate that name. I'm glad they changed it. And she even gives Nightcrawler a kiss. "So long, Wolverine. Pumpkin, to me, my friend's name's Logan." "Thanks, Logan." So, and of course, we're going to have a little, take it for what you will. I still think he's 18 or 19, but she's still 14. So, still probably not. So anyway, I'm not very good at writing letters. It is difficult for me to express my thoughts and feelings on paper. But for you, Kitty, I will try. That is, if you wish to hear from me," says Colossus. "There's hardly anyone I'd rather hear from. Goodbye, Peter." And they have a romantic kiss. And God, he looks so skinny. "All set, Kitty," says Cyclops. "I guess, but where's Ododo, Scott? Isn't she going to see me off?" And so Storm's in her attic room. It's become natural to think of Kitty as my own daughter. It's a shock to remember that she isn't. It hurts to see her go. So here she is, going up, and she lands. "Professor, I would ask a favor. May I drive Kitty to her new school?" And Kitty's like, "Yeah, I have no objection, Scott." And Cyclops says, "Fine with me. It'll be a long trip, though, and possibly a dangerous one. Do you want company, Ododo?" "I can manage, thank you." So they leave. They all wave goodbye, and Kitty's just crying. "Oh, poor little Kitty. Don't worry, it'll all work out." So Storm says, "Don't cry, kitten. This isn't the end of the world, not really." "Isn't it? Then how come I feel?" So this is really good. This is how kids would react. She feels like she'll never see any of them again. So they've arrived here, and Storm says, "After our last tussle with the Hellfire Club, I did a lot of research on people we fought. Emma Frost owns most of the land around here and controls most of the local industry. She's filthy rich." Oh, I think that's Kitty. Um, they're all filthy rich. They don't need to be criminals. They do it for kicks. They're sick. I can't argue with that. What do you think of the academy? The grounds are beautiful. And Kitty says, "The campus is perfect. The students are perfect. I hate it. I know the professor wanted me to dress nicely to make a good impression, but I wish I'd worn my oldest, most frayed, most comfortable pair of jeans. Everyone looks like a school of preppy zombie clones. Yuck." So, and so here we go. "Welcome, Catherine. We've been expecting you. Come with me, dear. We'll get you squared away. Your friend can wait for you in the lounge." So, and Storm's looking out here. I should have been more honest with Kitty and with Scott. I should have trusted him with my apprehensions as Kitty trusted me with her fears. So let's see. I've been half expecting an attack since we left the mansion, but that makes no sense. The Hellfire Club would not be so foolishly unnecessarily brazen. Why should they be? As far as Kitty's concerned, they've won. She's completely in their power. Perhaps Wolverine was right. We should have done anything to prevent this. That's right, Ododo, you should have. So she was reading her thoughts. And of course, Emma Frost. So we don't sort of get anything that happened. So we just get a few hours later, most likely, because now it's nighttime. And Storm says, "Are you squared away, kitten?" "Pretty much. I sense somehow that things are not quite as awful as you anticipated." "Nah, they're waiting till you leave before wheeling out the rack and the thumb screws." "I must leave, you know. It's a long trip home, Ororo. Want some company?" "Ah, silly goose, I would fly to the ends of the earth if I would fly with you to the ends of the earth if I could. Be brave, my dear one. And remember, should you ever need the X-Men or me as a friend, you have but to call. And so she leaves here. Um, so this person's her orientation advisor and says, "Hi, I'm Muffy." She's like, um, if it if this was an ordinary school, I'd feel out of place. I'm an X-Men. I've been to another planet, fought aliens, demons, supervillains. I liked the life I led. Nothing is going to be the same without it. Come on, I'll show you to your dorm. I don't fit here. I don't belong. So Storm's heading away. And so I won't spoil it for you. She pulls to the side of the road here. I'm probably too close to the academy. Kitty might see what I'm doing, but I don't care. I've waited too long, planned, and worked too hard for this moment. And in this, as in all things, my pleasure will not be denied. And so she's going to recite a poem or whatever from King Lear. I'm not going to read all that. And you can see she's creating a powerful storm, and you can see the lightning, although the lightning should have been uh, white because it blends with the cacao here. But um, she's like, the wind sweeping me into the air. This is magnificent. So kind of odd. So we'll see why. Uh, Power courses through me like fire. Every fiber of my being is alive, aware. I never felt such glorious sensations. In the storm I created, I don't perceive it as clouds and thunder and lightning, but as patterns of energy. I'm a living part of it. Merely by concentrating, I can shape these awesome natural forces to my will. And so here she's kind of creates, look at this, a snow. So we're just kind of go here, and so down she goes. In those last few minutes, I nearly lost control, so I must remember that I cannot create such effects out of nothing. I manipulate natural weather patterns at a fantastically accelerated rate that requires absolute precision, total concentration. If I ever let things get out of hand, the results could be devastating. So, still, the experience was extraordinary, the ultimate sensual thrill. For a time, I became one with the earth itself. But enough of these games. I did not become Storm for my own amusement. So, and you can see her pulling a cigarette. So you can already kind of tell what's going on. So, I have work to do. Mobile operator, I'd like to make a person-to-person call to the Hellfire Club. And so, being the Hellfire Club, Sebastian Shaw answers the phone himself. And so, Sebastian Shaw here. Good evening, Sebastian. This is Ododo. I've just delivered Kitty Pryde to the academy. And I thought I'd ring an old friend if you don't mind. And there was a pause there between N and then old friend. Not at all. Judging from recent weather reports in your vicinity, I assume all is going to plan. And Storm says, you assume correctly. I dearly wish I would be present when Miss Frost wakes up. And Miss Frost is in quotations. The torment she'll be going through ought to be exquisite. So we know that somehow the White Queen and Storm have swapped minds. So very nasty, my darling. But then that's what makes you so appropriately delightful as the White Queen. And so we're going to just continue calling her Storm so you don't get confused. But the White Queen, Storm. What a grand compliment, Sebastian. Thank you. I'll be on the road a few more hours. Initiate phase 2 after my arrival at Xavier School. See you then. And you can see that big smile. So there's a scream here, and this guy's like, good Lord, that scream. Well, it seems our guest, and again, quotations, is finally conscious. She sounds in bad shape. I better check her out. And that lady says, better not, Harvey. Our orders forbid any contact with the prisoner. We're to prevent her escape, period. And so, Goddess, what a nightmare. So this is Storm inside the White Queen. When I faced the White Queen, felt her telepathic cybolt burn into my mind. It was as if my very soul were being turned inside out. She was laughing, taking pleasure from my pain. I seemed to be in a cell. That's hardly surprising, but I've escaped from cells before. I feel so strange. My voice, my body don't seem quite right. There's so little light. I can barely see, but my night vision's almost as keen as Wolverine. I can function in anything save absolute darkness. Yet here I'm virtually blind. So, and so she turns on the light and sees she's in the White Queen's body. So she's like, "No, goddess, no." And so we're back at the um, Xavier's estate here. And this is Nightcrawler and Amanda Sefton. The two of them are in a relationship. You can see it's a romantic relationship, of course. Love the screen tones being applied. And suddenly they're attacked. You remember the cover from Andy Kubert. So here come the Sentinels. So, um, I love how they talk to themselves. It's just so silly because they're robots. And it's one thing for robots to think or process, but it's another for them to like talk aloud. So here comes Amanda to try to save Nightcrawler, and suddenly Cyclops' optic blast hits the Sentinel here. So and it lands on the lake, splashing all this water. And so Wolverine's like, head for the house. We're too vulnerable out here. I'll lug the elf. Move, darling. And so uh, Wolverine takes Nightcrawler, and she's like, that robot, Wolverine. And so it didn't come alone, and here are three. Now, in the original, this is actually on a page turn, so this is actually pretty a good idea. So, when you turn the page, it was on the opposite. So, very cool. I personally would have, I don't know, I would have had all three so you could see their faces on all three. But, you know, I'm not a hotshot comic book artist, so so Amanda says, "What are you doing, Wolverine? What do they want with us?" And Wolverine says, "They're Sentinels, sweetheart, mechanical mutant hunters, and more often than not, assassins as well. Shoot, Psych Zapbeam didn't even scratch that sucker's paint." So we can see here that the Sentinels are there because of the Hellfire Club. And so we've got, it looks like Sebastian's using all girls here. So one of them says, "We've run a scan of Wolverine, sir. He's making his bones are laced with adamantium, making them essentially unbreakable. He also possesses adamantium claws, which extend through his openings in the backs of both hands from housing built in his forearms." I like how they explain the powers. "Naturalize him quickly, Techno, but keep him alive. Harry Leland has plans for that pipsqueak psychopath," of course. Referred to the Dark Phoenix saga for Wolverine versus Harry Leland. Um, and so she's caught in the Sentinel's cable here. "No problem, Amanda." And he frees her using his claws. And then here comes Colossus. And so he grabs these things here. And now Nightcrawler looks like he's awake, and he carries Amanda. So he tosses him, and Wolverine kind of jumps on that thing, and Colossus punches him, but he can't see because of that brightness here. And he gets apprehended here, and Wolverine's like, "Nope." And you can see it goes right through. So Xavier says, "Wolverine, let me be your eyes. I will guide you with my thoughts." And Cyclops says, "Where'd they come from, Professor? I thought we were done with Sentinels. For the good, we put Stephen Lang and his Project Armageddon out of business." And that was 98 to 100, which I covered also using classic X-Men. So I think that would be Classic X-Men 7 and 8. So, Professor doesn't know, but the Sentinels are not to be stopped. And you can see that break here. Xavier says, in addition to learning their creator, we must discover how they managed to breach the security of the estate. And the Sentinels, fear not, mutant. All will be revealed in due course. Again, I know it's for the reader, but that is not how a robot. I don't know. Anyway, the White Queen is arrived, and she goes, "Ah, Shah, how typical of you to start without me. Do you hope that your precious toys can defeat the X-Men single-handedly, thereby rendering my plans to infiltrate them pointless? I wish you luck, my darling, because I think you'll need it. The X-Men have fought the Sentinels before and triumphed every time." And so you can see here Wolverine's evading that energy, but poor Colossus is getting pummeled here. So Nightcrawler tells Amanda to go into the forest. He teleports. She says, "What about you?" And anyway, he ends up teleporting and grabs Plastique. They have Plastique in the mansion. Goodness gracious. And puts it. You can see here putting them in the knees, and they blow up. And the X-Men really don't like these artists, but that's all right. Eventually, John Romita Jr. comes, and it's not that John Romita... Paul Smith really does really good job, but they replace him with John Romita Jr., who sort of didn't set the world on fire either. He's a solid artist, but eventually we get Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee. So you can see the X-Men dispatching them, and so they beat again. I love when you cross also through the panels here. It's so cool. And so Storm arrives. Everybody's happy to see them, but of course it's the White Queen, and you can see here that she uses bolts to render everybody down. And Wolverine was already down from the... And so... Meanwhile, Storm, remember, she's a lockpick, so she's trying to get out, and hears the voices in her head, and it kind of, because she doesn't know how to Psy-shield things, and here comes the Hellfire Club, who apparently put on their costumes. They were costumeless, but now they already have their costume, and they were going to go stop her, but she's down because she can't control her mental powers, but she still manages to get away. And so they're not shooting at her. I think these are flashlights because they're not going to kill the White Queen. And so she's remembering all the things like her and Jean Grey, and we get a little exposition here. Jean, will you at least let me ask for things before you telekinetically toss them at me? And she goes, "Didn't you ask?" "I'm sorry, Ododo. It takes a ferocious amount of concentration to keep my telepathic ability in line. Sometimes if I'm not careful, I get people's thoughts and words confused." So she figures, hey, that's how it works. I got to concentrate. And she grabs a rock here and makes her way into Kitty's room. And she goes away because she doesn't understand, and uses and zaps her mind accidentally because she doesn't know what she's doing. Kitty, goddess, forgive me. What have I done? When I called out to her, I somehow instinctively acted to stop her as well. My cybolt hit her with the impact of a brick wall. I came to save this child I love. Instead, I may have killed her. So, next to be concluded in Hellfire Gambit. So, Uncanny X-Men number 151, Chris Claremont, some guy, Bob McLeod, and Joseph Rubinstein. I'm sorry, we will never do anything with that guy again because I have no idea who he is. So, all right, like and subscribe. I do thank you for listening. Goodbye.